Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
You're just looking at me so intently there.
Well, I'm
I don't know
just
if
so excited to review
it was
this movie.
intentional or not. Yeah, it's very excited. It's another Marvel movie. How can you not be excited? A lot of people were. And our theater, the screening we saw it at was completely sold out on Sunday afternoon. So today we are reviewing Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That is the full, way too long title for this movie. And Dylan, would you like to tell them what it's about?
Absolutely. Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, along with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, explore the quantum realm, where they interact with strange creatures and embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought was possible. Man, that's one of the weirdest ones that we've had in a while, I feel like.
Just so many names.
So many names, and it doesn't get
synopsis.
specific at all. They explore the quantum. It's not like a fun, expedition to go check out the quantum realm. It's like they get sucked into there and trapped, basically.
Yeah, it's not so different from Strange World, which came out in November in that sense.
Yeah, I picked up on that. It had a lot of Strange World to it, and it also felt very Star Wars-ish as well.
A little bit, certainly in the sense of at least like Star Wars, like Cantina Bar or whatever that place is called on Tatooine, like kind of you're in a new place, meeting weird looking creatures and sometimes people.
Yep.
That was kind of where the Star Wars comparisons ended for me. I'd read a lot of them, and it wasn't quite as I was expecting to have to blow up a Death Star or something, which I would not have put past Disney for just being like, hey, look, Star Wars exists down here.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, the charging cell or whatever was the Death Star that they had to destroy, and the one dude did have kind of an empire. I can see where it's coming from, but either way.
Sure.
So we get about 5 minutes of this movie that takes place in the normal universe, and then everyone is transported away to the quantum realm. I guess first impressions from this movie. I mean, we did see this together. I was pretty excited. We were definitely kind of hoping that this could be a bounce back for Marvel from some of their other latest films. And what did you think?
So for me, this just kind of continued a trend that I've been feeling since basically, I mean, post Endgame for sure, but really just I think Phase 3 ended with Far From Home.
Okay.
Kind of an epilogue to Phase 3. So post that, there haven't been that many movies I've liked. And there's just this feeling that I've gotten where it just doesn't feel like they're putting as much effort into these as they normally do, or like they're just churning them out too quickly. Like they don't feel ready completely. Like parts of a lot of these movies are good. I liked the first half of this quite a bit. I liked the family dynamics. The cast is great.
Yeah.
And they maintain, although one of my favorite MCU characters, period, Luis, I believe is his name, Michael Peña's character from the first two Ant-Man movies, is not in this. Yeah. And I think this suffers greatly. I want that guy explaining the quantum realm to people. That's what I want. Just huge missed opportunity. But we get a little more Michelle Pfeiffer, which is cool. But second half of the movie, it just feels like they're getting to draft 2 on the scripts now and just saying good enough, shoot it.
Yep.
And some of the stuff that's already in there is good, and some of it needs more work. And they just kind of think I don't know, people are going to go see it anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I also felt the same way. And in particular, to me, what's felt off for a long string of movies now has kind of been the comedy aspect. The jokes aren't as good, and I don't know if that's just because we don't have the natural kind of chemistry of all the earlier phase characters. I mean, when it's Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson snapping back and forth at each other, maybe that is just naturally more funny as opposed to these characters that we don't really know or spend a lot of time with. But it just feels like the jokes aren't as good. It feels like they swing and they miss a lot more than I remember.
Yeah, that was a part I was going to bring up was that there were a lot of times in this movie where I couldn't tell if like a line delivery, if it was supposed to be like sarcastic or sincere, which I
Mm-hmm.
think goes to like the script and like editing as well, because there were just moments where somebody would say something and I'd go, "Huh?" And then we just move on, and I couldn't, and no, we didn't see anybody react to it, so I like on screen, none of the characters reacted to it. They just cut to somewhere
Yeah,
else, and
yeah.
I was like, "What was he being sarcastic, or was that like a very heartfelt moment that we just witnessed that we just kind of sped away from really quickly?"
Yeah, agreed. I felt like that this is the first movie in a while where I've noticed the editing kind of bothering me. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like there were a lot of scenes where we're just getting into a conversation and then it cuts away and we go somewhere else. And then it's like, why did we have to go over there? Because then I don't know. There was just a lot of decisions with where
Yeah,
we were and how we were spending our time.
yeah, and there were a lot of times where I felt like, particularly in the second half of the movie, where is where I had more issues, and I feel like the script needed more work. Where I
Hmm.
felt like we were given a payoff to something that was not properly set up, whether it was at times a joke or at times like kind of an emotional arc
Yeah.
that they sort of gave us like 30 seconds before, and now all of a sudden we're supposed to feel this thing for,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like there are moments where I just thought like, how is how did you think giving us this little bit of this character or this part of the story was going to be like a moment that was going to land in the last 20 minutes of the movie? Like just
Yeah.
so many times it just continually fell flat.
Yeah, I mean, I we saw this yesterday, and I can't even really remember like the father daughter. Like, how does that all resolve itself in the end? I can't even really remember like what they were. I know at the beginning she was like, "You're not doing enough to help like good causes," and then they went to the quantum realms and everything got weird, and then it was just like, "Oh, Jonathan Majors, like,
Who's great, by the
who's
way.
great? He was my
But to go to
favorite
your point
part."
too, during like the climactic battle, there's
Yeah.
a moment where somebody does something to Kang, Jonathan Majors' character, and he sort of disappears.
Hmm.
And they cut away from it. I had no idea what happened. And the story kept going, and I was like, where did he go? Is he gone? Did he disappear himself, or did somebody make him disappear?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's such a weird, I don't know. I just think the editing and the script on this movie were like really could have used more work. And it's a bummer because the cast is great. I'm a
Yeah.
huge Jonathan Majors fan, and I've been looking forward to this for a while because first thing I saw him in was Last Black Man in San Francisco back in 2018, and I just
Mm-hmm.
immediately thought this guy's going to be a A-list star.
Yeah.
And he's been
Yeah.
in some things since then that have done pretty well. I mean, he was in Da 5 Bloods,
Yep.
and he was in The Harder They Fall, which was all right. He was in Devotion this past Thanksgiving with Glenn
He's
Powell, which people
Yep,
are
he's
aware of. And now
co-starring in Creed 3.
that's what I was getting at. And now this
Yep.
year he's got this and then Creed 3 in like a week and a half.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
this is kind of the Jonathan Majors coming out party. And he was also in, obviously, as the same character, he was in the series Loki, which I really liked.
yeah, yeah.
And he was
And they
great
are
in there too.
it's
But
cool that they're setting him up as kind of maybe the big bad or one of the big bads, like, in the next phase. I like
oh,
that.
he's
I mean, he's well cast, and, like, I'm glad they have him, and he will be in multiple movies. Like, alright, I'm like, I'm on board with that decision.
for sure. His makeup
Yeah.
was weird though, where like he has some, you can almost kind of see it a bit in the image
Yeah,
behind
he
you,
all
where he
ducked a
has
little
this
bit.
like
Yeah.
this sort of like, I can't tell if they're scars or not, but going from like kind of the sides
It's,
of
like,
his
right under
forehead,
you
like
can see in my
over his
background.
eyes.
Sorry.
It's for people listening.
No, sorry.
Um, and they go under his eyes on both sides, and they just kind of like the light hits them in a way where it just constantly looks like he's been weeping. It's a
Mhm,
very odd choice for
mhm.
that character, but I mean it doesn't take away from his performance at all. There were just like a couple times throughout the movie where at first we meet him and I'm like, oh, has he been crying?
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I was like, oh no, he just kind of looks like that. And that's a choice, I guess.
I mean, I feel like uh, Jonathan Majors makes it work because his
Yeah.
performance is very emotionally grounded. I mean, he does a great job, making us feel the desperation that he wants to, get to where he wants to go, also while being a bad guy. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, interesting decision though. I will agree with you on that, and even kind of yeah, just the way he was introduced and kind of rolled out, like the movie makes you wait for a while to meet him, but it's also like Michelle Pfeiffer is just like refusing to explain to her family like who he is and what the danger is, and that goes on like 3 scenes too many. Like,
You and I have specifically talked about how I don't know if this bothers a lot of people, but it really bothers us
yes.
when like a part of a movie, like a plot or like a beat, like hinges on one character just not telling other people what's happening.
Yeah.
It's actually like my biggest issue with the second with Star Wars the Force Awakens, not the Force Awakens, the second one in
Oh,
the
The
new
Last
trilogy,
Jedi.
The Last Jedi, which
Hmm.
other people dislike for different reasons.
Hmm.
My biggest issue there is that Laura Dern just won't tell Oscar Isaac what the hell is happening. And he doesn't trust her, and he's like about to like wage a coup,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she sees it happening, and she's just like, can't tell you. Like
Yeah.
just 30 seconds and we're all good. And
Yeah.
that's this has that as well, which bothers us more than
Hmm.
most people, I think. But that I
Hmm.
think that's also going against it and just feels like wheel spinning and a waste of time.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, overall it was just okay. There were some high points. I mean, I liked some of the concepts that they kind of came up with. I really like the kind of ooze that makes you understand different languages.
That was cool. And that was in the first half of the movie, which I think was pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we'll see. We'll see where it goes. And last thing I think I'll say before we get to the stars is, obviously there's closing credit scenes and there's two of them. But I gotta say, I mean, we were in a packed theater and pretty much nobody left. So I mean, you're waiting for the credits to end, and there are so many animators for this one that it is a long credits. So get comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but then just both of them, I felt like kind of just felt like duds. Like they were, but like they were okay, but it just they didn't. I don't know. They didn't pack a punch. They were kind of like one was kind of trying to be funny, the other was kind of, but it's just like I don't know. What do you think?
The first one just reminded me of Rick and Morty in a way where I just felt like this has been done.
Yeah, yeah.
I like the second one a bit just because it made me excited for something,
Mm-hmm.
which is not always the case with Marvel the last couple of years for me. So that like it wasn't like the scene itself was great, but it was just kind of a confirmation that something's coming that I was hoping was
Okay.
coming.
Nice.
So I did like that at least.
Yeah. All right. Well, should we get to the stars?
Yeah, let's do it. We'll be right back with our star ratings. Okay, I can go
Okay.
first.
Go for it.
So I'm going to give this 2 stars. This is the same score that I gave Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, though I do like this better.
Mm,
But the more I think about it, there's just an element of laziness to this that bothered me.
mm-hmm.
Where at least some of the other ones, like I don't think Eternals is good. I gave that a 2 as well. But I mean, I never felt like they weren't trying with that
Yeah.
movie. I
Mm-hmm.
think they just missed.
Mm-hmm.
This one just feels like they got halfway through it and they were like, just wrap it up. People are gonna go.
Yeah, yeah. Get
And
Jonathan Majors in there. Let's set it up and let's move on.
exactly. It just it really also because I do really like the second Ant-Man movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. And
Hmm.
this was always kind of the one franchise that was a little more grounded. And now it just like they just throw us into a big CGI machine again, and it looks like Multiverse of Madness. And despite how many times different characters say this is beautiful, there's nothing interesting looking about any of this, really.
Yeah, that's the one thing that Strange World maybe has over this is at
For
least
sure.
that.
Strange World at least looks great.
Yeah, this didn't even look great. It was just kind of like, okay, like everything I'm seeing is like kind of creative, but also just seems kind of, I don't know. Like you said, it was the first draft or the second draft. And they're like, that's good enough.
Yeah, that the whole movie
Um,
just has good enough feel to it.
Yep. Over to me. I'm gonna go just a little higher. I will give it a 2.5, mostly because Jonathan Majors and of the remaining
Mhm.
Marvel, main characters, Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, definitely like the most likable and fun, or one of the most likable and fun. It's pretty much him and Spider-Man at this point, like that you can rely on to just like, okay, all right, I like this guy. And
Yeah,
so like he does good. He does a good enough job. Jonathan Majors is great. Like you said, like we mentioned, the cast is really solid. Um, Definitely disappointing, like a little disappointing in almost all the areas, but I just think it was okay. I did not like it as much as some of the other Phase 4 ones, but I did like it more than Eternals and Multiverse of Madness. So
yeah, same. Uh,
disappointment.
and in a few months, we get Guardians Volume 3. So once again, we'll be hoping that the next Marvel movie can bring us back to
Yeah,
where they
yeah,
were.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll have more discussions about that, I'm sure, as we get closer to that release date.
Yeah.
All right. Unless there's anything else, is it your turn to put a wrap on the show?
It is.
All right, go for it.
They're not aliens. They're spiders mutated by contaminated waste.